Hey guys, tonight we're descending somewhere dark. Imagine cobbled Roman streets at midnight emptied of senators and sandal-bound citizens, quiet except for the wind pressing through marble arches. The moon casts thin shadows over cracked stone, illuminating nothing, except the outline of something older beneath your feet. You can't see it, but it's there. A pit, a cell, a tomb with no grave marker. Because this execution wasn't about justice. It was about being forgotten. Maybe lock the door. Let's begin tonight's descent. You probably wouldn't survive this not intact anyway. So before we enter the shadows, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if this kind of darkness is your kind of history. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now ... turn off the lights. You kneel, wrists shackled. Or maybe the unlucky one. Others whisper who's already there, beneath the temple of Vesta kept like a sacred wound, reopened only when needed. Historians still debate whether this was intentional ... or simply a practical horror reused across generations. It's hard to say. The air smells dry, chalky like dust and oil-soaked parchment. The forum trembles faintly above, feet scuffling past in pairs of threes, none of them stopping to look at you. But they all know you're here. You're not in prison. You're not in a dungeon. You're beneath the very heart of Rome. This isn't punishment for murder, or treason, or stealing a senator's wine. It's worse than that. You've broken something sacred. And so Rome has devised something delicate. Not a beheading, not a crucifixion, but a quiet burial. Alive, in the dark, without a blade drawn or a drop spilled. Above you, they call it ancestor, a pollution of the soul, the kind of crime that stains the gods themselves. You are the chosen scapegoat. Some say the ground was hollowed out in secret at night, lined in stone, sealed in silence. The space is narrow. You can't stand fully. You can't lie flat. A curved brick ceiling bends low over your head, barely avoiding your scalp. No light creeps in, except for the moment they open the hatch. A single priest's voice echoed down. Let the earth receive her. Then the lid returned, a soft thunk. And nothing. You breathe shallowly to conserve air, though no one told you to. It's instinct. What they did give you, curiously, was food. A loaf of barley bread, a flickering oil lamp, a small flask of water, perhaps milk, depending on how ceremonious they felt. They said this was mercy, but you know better. This is ceremony. You're not murdered. You're not touched. You simply ... vanish. You haven't just been punished. You've been turned into ritual. In the stillness, you try to understand your sin. Maybe you were a Vestal Virgin, a priestess of Vesta who vowed chastity for 30 years to keep Rome's sacred flame burning. And maybe ... purity is. They found out you hadn't kept that vow. Or maybe the accusation was false, politically convenient. Doesn't matter. Guilt isn't the point. Another surviving source mentions the eerie silence of the event. No crowds, no wails. You reduced to a forgotten breath. A buried soul Rome pretends never lived. Just the solemn procession, the descending body, and the seal. And in ancient Rome, purity wasn't a feeling. It was a structure, a contract. You broke it and Rome must be scrubbed clean. The irony is almost laughable. The Romans feared bloodshed inside the city limits. It offended the gods. So they built this instead a sanctified loophole. An unearthed tablet from the early Republic describes the execution of a priestess not by violence, but by the earth itself. There's an old Roman superstition that says the earth swallows only what Rome permits. So this is permission. And yet ... your ears still work. You can still hear the forum above. Not clearly, just fragments. a merchant hawking figs, hooves tapping past, the low, disinterested laugh of someone sharing wine. Life goes on, suspended directly over your grave. It grinds on as if you're already gone, but you're not. You're awake, and worse, you're expected to stay that way, for days perhaps. They made sure you'd linger. There's even an account, perhaps apocryphal, of a priestess scratching marks into the clay beneath her before finally falling silent. They found them during construction centuries later. Lines, spirals, a name. Of course, the name was never recorded. That was the point. Your identity has already been plucked from you like a weed from soil. You are called that woman, never a name, never a face. Not in official records, not in public memory. The sacred hearth, the one you are meant to tend. That's why these tombs weren't reused, not even by the most desperate grave robbers. But Roman children would whisper it at night, the buried one, a boogeyman in white robes, scratching from under the floorboards. One curious belief held by some early Roman sects claimed that a soul buried without mourning becomes a kind of shadow, a tethered ghost that Rome must keep feeding with silence, to count the breaths, to imagine something anything outside of this void. And yet, the city kept building over them. There's even an argument that parts of the Senate stood unknowingly above your grave for centuries. If irony had a scent, it would be the damp air you're breathing now. You try not to panic. You picture the fire. It was supposed to burn forever, but now it's just you. Just you and the walls. And the question slowly rising like bile in your throat. What lasts longer, the story ... or the silence? You do not sleep, you drift. Sometimes your eyes close, but not in rest in defense. Because seeing the tight stone curve above you, over and over, blinks your sanity like a candle in a cave. Your limbs have begun to ache, but in an almost polite way. They haven't yet screamed. That will come later. For now, there's only stillness, and the question of when it ends. Your voice croaks, rebounds off the walls, returns smaller. It's the only human sound you've heard in hours, perhaps longer. You might say your own name aloud, just to prove you still have one. The people who put you here did it in the name of the divine. The Pontifex Maximus himself, the chief priest of Rome, presided over your condemnation. With robes ironed smooth and lips tight in ritual precision, he signed your descent as if blessing a harvest. You were grain spoiled. And this is your threshing floor. You try to speak, but you're not sure anyone's listening, not even the gods. That's the cruelest irony of all. Hard to know. You've lost track. Above, the forum is quieter now. Maybe it's night again. Or maybe it's just a quieter day. But you still hear the voices. One of the priests remarked, almost offhandedly, that the space was modeled after Othello's a circular tomb used for heroes in ancient Greece, an unperson, unworthy of even proper execution. The comparison was unintentional, perhaps, or maybe bitterly precise. Latin, yes, but in tones you don't recognize. Like children trying to imitate senators. Historians have speculated about this, whether the psychological unraveling was part of the sentence or merely a byproduct. A scrape, stone against stone. Like ghosts reciting prayers, they were never taught to finish, not outside. Inside, they begin faintly soft and strange. Even the height forces discomfort. You can't fully stand or fully lie. Your body hovers in contortion, and the pain dulls into a low, vibrating hum. It's oddly ceremonial, as though your suffering was curated, like a shrine to guilt. It's likely nothing. Hallucinations, the lack of light, the scarcity of air. These things do strange work on the brain. But here, now, inside this tomb, it feels intentional. They built amphitheaters to amplify cheers ... and rooms like this to muffle screams. It feels ... designed. The pit you occupy, if it can be called that, was built with exacting care. And maybe it was. After all, Rome knew the power of architecture. There's a detail you recall, now something you overheard during your trial. You aren't a hero. You're the inverse. Still, the architecture remains. An accidental homage to someone they never meant to remember. There's something almost funny in that. A soft sound interrupts your thoughts. No, not from within. This one's different. Your heart leaps, but it isn't rescue. You know that. They never open the pit once sealed. That's the rule. That's the story. But sometimes, rarely, they allow another prisoner to join. Yes, there are stories of two being sealed together. A pair of disgraced Vestals, or a priest and his lover, or a liar and a fool. The records conflict. Historians still debate whether this was intentional ... or if the records simply collapse two tragedies into one. You hold your breath. No one joins you. You wake without knowing if you ever truly closed your eyes. At one point, you dream that the hatch opens again, but it's not the priest's. It's your mother. But the sound lingers in your bones like a false dawn. Time continues to spill out, indistinct and mocking. You sleep without sleeping. She doesn't say a word, just stares down into the pit. You reach for her, and the vision folds inward, like papyrus catching fire. When you blink again, something is different. The lamp has gone out. You hadn't noticed when. But now the dark is total. No flame, no shadows. No longer picture senators, or temples, or even the sky. And somehow ... that changes everything. Your thoughts, once tethered loosely to the world above, now unspool. You no longer imagine the forum. Now you begin to imagine what's beneath. Something older than Rome. That Vesta, the goddess you were sworn to serve, was not simply the flame of civilization, but the flame that guarded a threshold. That beneath her temple burned a second fire. Invisible, older. One that punished those who crossed between realms. The earth around you feels sentient. Pressed in, listening. You recall a fringe belief, whispered in back alleys of Rome, frowned upon by the official cults. And in this theory, you aren't a sinner. You're a trespasser. You've entered the earth's throat, and it will not spit you out. As if the word is too old for your tongue, you try to speak again. This time, it isn't your name you say. It's hers, but it did it politely. That's the horror. Not the cruelty, but the calm. The quiet paperwork of your erasure. The way your execution was conducted with incense and hymns. Vesta. It sounds strange in your mouth, like tasting iron. You remember things that never happened. A corridor beneath the temple. A child's hand brushing yours in the dark. A flickering flame that speaks not in words, but in memory. But the silence that follows is somehow heavier. Expectant. A few hours or days later, your mind begins to shed pieces of itself, like cloth burned at the edges. You reach for your water. It's almost gone. You drink anyway. It tastes like ash now. Rome did this to you, but it calls your name. There's even record of a procession. Not to honor you, but to warn the city. A symbolic march through the forum, with veiled heads and silence, as if mourning an idea rather than a person. They called it burying the storm. But storms don't vanish. They wait. You press your ear to the stone. Nothing. Or ... something. A whisper. You can't tell whether it's real. The one they've tried so hard to forget. The air is changing. You don't feel it at first. Not in your skin, but deeper in the way your thoughts snag on themselves, like silk torn across rough wood. There's a thinness to everything now, as if the pit is no longer a place, but a thought someone forgot to finish thinking. Your hands tremble, not from cold, but from something else. Exhaustion, yes. Hunger, yes. But also desecration. The sacred is leaking. That your fall was not personal, but necessary. They told you this was justice. that Rome needed cleansing, that what you did broke a pact older than the Republic itself. But now you see it clearly. This wasn't about you. This was about fear. Rome was afraid of what you represented, because you touched something they weren't ready to confront. Not death, but shame. The sound cracks strangely in the narrow space, echoing with a tone that doesn't feel quite like your own. You wonder if the others laughed too, the ones buried before you, the ones no one remembers, the kind of shame that gods can't forgive. You begin to laugh, softly, at first, then sharper, and then you remember the law. You are property of the gods, not the civic law, the sacred one, the lex sacrata, the holy code that governed the lives of the untouchable. That once you were consecrated, you weren't property of Rome. To harm you was to harm Vesta. To punish you required permission, and that's where it twists. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was just the first story Rome needed to invent. The facts are blurred. Historians still debate whether this was intentional ... or if the tale of Tarpeia was sown into the soil to distract from the women who came after, because they didn't touch you. Not directly. They let the earth do it. No iron, no nails. Only brick and gravity. They say the first Vestal buried alive was Tarpeia. They say Tarpeia betrayed the city. You didn't, and yet here you are, sealed underground, untouched, unstabbed, unstrangled, because your death must be clean. Your body must remain whole. To spill blood would be to contaminate the ritual. This was Rome's solution, to create a punishment that erased without staining. Even the tools were chosen with care. And food, yes, always food. One historian wrote that the reason they gave you sustenance wasn't mercy, it was jurisdiction. That as long as you were alive when the door closed, Rome could say, she chose not to live. It's a legal fiction, draped in ceremony. And you were the centerpiece. But you know what else was illegal? Burying someone inside the pomerium, the sacred boundary of Rome. So they didn't call this burial. They called it interment within a chamber. A phrase that turns death into architecture. You try to breathe slowly, to find order in the ritual. Bread, water, oil, silence. You imagine each as a layer in the spell. A charm not to protect you, but to protect them. From you, from your memory, from what this pit really is. A shrine to denial. Perhaps your mind is. And yet the earth remembers. Its cold has changed. It's closer now. The walls seem to press inward. Perhaps the ground is shifting. But something is rising. You hear a murmur. Not speech, exactly. Not Latin. Not anything you know. A sound like breath caught in stone. You remember a strange belief, passed down through temple gossip, that the earth doesn't sleep, it listens. And when too much silence is poured into it, it begins to speak back. You try to ignore it. Focus instead on the symbols etched into the ceiling. You hadn't noticed them until now. Faint carvings, maybe accidental, maybe made by hands like yours. There's a curve, a half circle, then another beneath it. A crescent, a face you don't know, but it gives you something to focus on. You trace it with your eyes until they ache. And then, a flicker. Light? No. Imagination. Or is it? A soft golden glow. Barely there, like a dream of fire. Your fingers twitch. You reach toward it. It fades. The lamp is still out. It never returned. But your mind did something else. It remembered light. And for a moment, that's worse than the dark, because memory has weight. And in this place, weight is dangerous. It presses you down. It buries you deeper. That when too many sins piled up, the gods would stir and ask for balance. There's a sensation now faint, rhythmic. A heartbeat, not yours. Beneath the stone, you press your palm to the floor. The ones who demanded purity from flawed bodies. There it is again. A pulse. Slow, Ancient. You remember an old belief that some temples were built over sleeping gods. Maybe this isn't a punishment. Maybe it's an offering. You begin to speak again. This time, you don't say your name. You say theirs. The gods you served. The gods who watched. Your voice quivers, but it doesn't stop. I was the flame, you whisper. It echoes, then fades. You're not sure who you were addressing. Maybe not even the gods. Maybe Rome itself. You listen. The heartbeat is gone, and something else has replaced it. A coldness, not in your skin, but in your thoughts. As though your body is no longer the only thing in this chamber. Like something ancient just opened its eyes. You crouch lower, clutch your knees. The food is gone now. The water, long drained. You're not dead. Not yet. But the earth has started to forget how to hold you. You feel lighter, stranger. Maybe it isn't. Maybe there's something else here. Watching, waiting. For what? The last breath? The last word? Or maybe, for your silence. You are no longer sure how long it has been. There is no sun to track, no flame to shrink. Only the cycle of your thoughts, looping, overlapping, breaking apart. Your fingers feel distant. Your breath comes in short, sharp pulls, like it belongs to someone else. You think you hear your name again, but not from above. From below. It's softer now, familiar. Your own voice, maybe, but older, fractured. Like it has traveled through layers of soil and memory and regret. You try to speak back, but your throat is dry. Your lips crack. The silence absorbs it anyway. This is the part they never spoke of. A part beyond death. Not in the spiritual sense, no. Not heaven, not the underworld, but something liminal. A suspension. The slow unraveling of self inside a place designed not to kill you, but to forget you. And now, even you are beginning to forget you. The youngest daughter of a miner family, barely 12. You remember the weight of the white robes. The first time you stepped into the sacred hearth. The silence you were told to hold like breath. Your thoughts slipped backward, toward the beginning. The temple, the fire, never wanting. Desire was disorder. That political tides rose and fell with the casting of a Vestal into the earth. Passion was pollution. And still, something human slipped through. You were chosen young. Keep the flame, they said. Keep Rome alive. And for a time, you believed it. You were taught not just rituals, but restraint. The art of never needing. They said you broke your vow. But there were always rumors. That the high priests chose which girl to accuse when the Senate needed a scapegoat. You were not the first. There's a surviving inscription, nearly erased with time, that speaks of a shadow flame quenched beneath the forum. No name, just that phrase. Shadow flame. That's what you've become. But the strange part is, you're not alone. You feel it now, fully. There are others here. Not physically, not breathing, but present. You begin to hear them in the moments between your own heartbeats. A girl humming a song you once knew. A man reciting legal phrases in a slow, sleepwalking cadence. A woman older, calmer whispering prayers to a god whose name you never learned. You curl into yourself, like a leaf folding in on rot. It's not memory, not madness, it's presence. The walls here do not echo. They remember. You press your ear to the stone again. There, a thud, a scrape. Faint. Is someone walking above you? No, not footsteps. More like ... scratching. Not as metaphor, but as an organism. That every ritual fed it. Every sacrifice soothed it. And when Rome felt threatened, it fed on memory. From within, you recoil, breath catching. You press your back against the far wall, suddenly conscious of how tight the chamber is, how little space remains. The scratching continues. But it's not coming closer. It's already here. You open your mouth to scream but stop, because now you hear something else. Laughter. Dry. Raspy. Not cruel. Amused. It's coming from inside your mind, but feels older than thought. You remember a fringe teaching, banned by official doctrine, whispered only by temple servants, that Rome itself was alive. You were not buried to die. You were buried to be digested, piece by piece, stripped of identity, of history, until even your bones became part of the foundation. Not honored, not hated. Just ... used. There's another joke in that. A terrible one. They said the Vestals ensured Rome's continuity. And now, your body does exactly that. One brick among many. You laugh again softly. Hollow. Your voice sounds like it's coming from a tunnel now. And maybe it is, because the chamber is changing. You swear the wall across from you has softened. No longer brick, but clay. Your fingers press against it and sink slightly. It's warm. You pull back, heart racing. The lamp is still dead. But something glows behind your eyes' faint shapes, like hands in firelight. They reach upward. Not to pull you in, to guide. Is this madness? The last unraveling? Or something older in emergence? You remember the bread they left you. A symbolic meal. One last taste of the living world. But there's a darker reading, too. That in Roman ritual, grain was often fed to the earth as a binding agent. But packed, you weren't nourished. You were offered. The scratching has stopped. Now it's breathing. No, it's you. You've been holding your breath for too long. You gasp, sharp, your lungs pulling in air that's thinner now. Something tells you this is the last night, though there's no way to be sure. So they covered her in oil and suffocated her under a canopy of wool, not to punish her, but to correct the ritual. There's at least one account of a Vestal surviving 3 full days underground before finally succumbing, and one count widely dismissed, but persistent, of a girl escaping. Still, you feel it, like a story nearing its end. One disturbing fact resurfaces: burials like this didn't always kill within a day. She clawed her way free, they say, and when she emerged, the priests didn't know what to do. Historians still debate whether this was intentional ... or just another cruel myth built on older bones. But here, in this moment, you believe it, because you no longer fear death. You fear being forgotten incorrectly. You close your eyes and whisper your name, not for the gods, not for Rome, for yourself. So you remember it, even if no one else does. The walls are no longer walls. Not exactly. They've softened not physically, but conceptually. The boundary between chamber and self has thinned to a whisper. You no longer know where your skin ends and the earth begins. You're not frightened anymore. Not in the same way. The stone is warm. Not from heat, but from presence. There's a peace in it now. Not release, but surrender. You sit cross-legged, spine curved like an ancient urn, and press your palms flat to the floor. You are not alone here. A subtle breath, slow and deep, like the earth itself is meditating. You fall into that rhythm. Let it shape your thoughts. And maybe you never were. There's a rhythm to this place, one you couldn't hear until now. You remember the ritual one last time. They dressed you in white. They tied your wrists loosely, out of tradition, not necessity. They spoke no curses, only silence, thick with disapproval. She watched from the crowd half hidden behind her mother's robes. Your accuser never met your eyes, but someone else did. A girl, younger than you were when you first stepped into the temple of Vesta. She didn't look horrified. She looked curious. You wonder if she remembers your face, if she whispered your story to herself later that night, if she grew up to tend the flame in your place, if she ever dared to question why it flickered. That's the legacy they gave you, not martyrdom, not legend, just the seed of unease. The stone seems to yield slightly as if allowing it. Your body is weak now. You haven't eaten in days, haven't moved much. Even your thoughts have grown quiet, slipping gently between memory and dream. A breath held too long in the mouth of a girl watching injustice dressed as piety. You lean back against the wall, whispered Latin, older dialects, that the world above was for order, the world below for truth, and between them a middle space, a liminal thread, fragments of Greek, chants you don't know but understand instinctively, a shared archive of all the buried. That's when the voices return. Not hallucinations, not madness. Memory's yours, but not. They speak in dozens of tongues, each one a candle snuffed, a ritual sealed, a name scrubbed from marble. But here below they remain. They do not fade. The Romans believed in layers, not just in their cities, but in their souls. You exist in that thread now, still breathing, still aware, but not entirely alive. You begin to murmur to yourself, not a prayer, not a plea, just a recounting, who you were, where you walked, how the sacred fire smelled on the day you entered the temple. Your voice is raw, thin, but the words come easily. And then you realize, this ... is memory. This is what they feared, that you would carry the story too long, that the silence would not seal you, that beneath their temples, beneath their laws, a current still moved carrying fragments of truth like coins through a riverbed. Even in forgetting you, they preserved you. That's the paradox Rome never solved. To erase you, they had to name you first, even if only in secret. You are tired now. The walls feel softer still. Not like stone, like cloth, like sleep. You let your eyes close. And then, faintly, almost imperceptibly, something happens. The ceiling groans. Not loud, not near, but above. Stone shifting. A weight moving. You don't hope. You don't resist. You simply listen. And in that moment, it occurs to you. Rome may not remember you, but history does. Maybe not by name, but by shape, by absence, by the strange, sacred hush of a punishment too precise to explain away. The next sound is softer than a heartbeat, like sand settling. And then, nothing. You are the flame, snuffed yet burning still, buried but not gone. They wanted to erase you. Instead, they made you eternal. You are not a martyr. You are not a ghost. You are memory, and you are still here. Greater than decompression begins. It's over now. Not the story, just the telling. You step away from the darkness, slowly. Let its breath loosen from your shoulders. The chamber fades. The stone dissolves. The air grows clearer. You're back in your room. The walls are solid. Your ceiling, quiet. Your light flickers softly, not from oil, but from a bulb. Still, it feels sacred, because now you know what it means to be buried without death, to be silenced in the name of order, to feel time bend around you like roots curling in soil. But some refuse to stay silent. And yet, you returned. Not all stories are meant to be told. Tonight, you listened to one, and it listened to you back. So exhale. Stretch your fingers. Let the cold fade from your thoughts like mist from a mirror. This story is finished, but others wait. In forgotten books, in cracked stones, in the hush beneath the ground. Sleep now, but listen carefully. The silence remembers everything,